Hello, I mentioned the Army Remount Service in Part 7. This was a division set up in 1887 to bring control of the purchasing and training of horses and mules for the military under a central unit. Previously, acquisition was the responsibility of individual regiments. At the start of World War I in 1914, there were 5 remount depots. These are based at Woolwich in London, in Dublin, Ireland, Sysonby near Melton Mowbray in Leicestershire, Arborfield Cross near Reading in Berkshire, and Chiddingfold near Godalming in Surrey, together capable of housing a little over 1,000 animals. Compulsory purchase to meet the wartime emergency led to the establishment of 4 more depots. Within a year, more than 500,000 horses and mules had been impressed, and the number continued to grow, peaking in 1917. Procurement was a cause of considerable distress for many, including traders reliant on their horse for deliveries and those whose relationship with their horse was that of family pet. Horses were used in support roles for reconnaissance, carrying messages and hauling heavy artillery, supply wagons and ambulances in muddy conditions unsuitable for motor vehicles. They were also used in traditional cavalry charge tactics, facing asphyxiating gas, artillery and machine gun fire, and suffering huge casualties in the process. Best known of the horses who served with the Allied forces was Warrior, the mount of politician and army officer, and from 1933 Baron Mottiston, Jack Seeley. John, but always known as Jack, was born at Pinkston, a village in Derbyshire, but spent most of his time on the family estate on the Isle of Wight. In 1900 he was commissioned as a captain in the newly formed Imperial Yeomanry. Setting off to fight in the Second Boer War, he had to dye his white Arab horse called Maharaja brown for camouflage purposes on the South African veldt. Later elected to Parliament representing the Isle of Wight, Seeley was recalled to active service at the outbreak of World War I and served with distinction on the Western Front throughout the war, earning a reputation for bravery and resilience along with his faithful thoroughbred bay gelding Warrior, foaled in 1908. Sir Alfred Munnings served with the Remount Service before an attachment as a war artist with the Canadian Forestry Corps and the Canadian Cavalry Brigade. His first portrait, now in the Canadian War Museum, Ottawa, was of Jack Seeley astride Warrior, painted in full view of the enemy lines less than a mile away, with Munnings standing on duckboards to avoid sinking into the mud. In command of the Canadian Cavalry Brigade, Seeley and Warrior famously led a cavalry charge at Moray Wood on the banks of the River Avre near Amiens in northern France in March 1918. An engagement that made a significant contribution to delaying the German spring offensive. Munnings painted the Charge of Flowerdew Squadron, also in the collection at the Canadian War Museum, at the Battle of Moray Wood, for which English-born Gordon Flowerdew, who led C Squadron of Lord Strathcona's horse, the Royal Canadians, was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. Seeley published My Horse Warrior, a memoir in 1934. Warrior survived the war and lived until 1941. The Times and the Evening Standard both printed obituaries under the heading "The Horse the Germans Couldn't Kill." A bronze statue by Philip Blacker of Warrior and Major General Jack Seeley was unveiled in 2014 at Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight. The Remount Service was absorbed in the Royal Army Veterinary Service in 1942. In 2014, Warrior was posthumously awarded the PDSA Dickin Medal, regarded as the animal's Victoria Cross, in recognition of the contribution made by all the animals who served with the British forces in the First World War. And that brings us to the end of another series. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, Hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can click on the rose window over my shoulder.